What's up, guys? This is backwards, so I'm sorry. But you recognize the book. We are going to go over Chapter 3 of Participatory Journalism today. And I figured it was way easier for me to make a video of me presenting this information to you than it was for me to try to memorize it and spit it back to you in class. So this way I can keep screwing up and just cut those clips out, and it'll be a nice, well-rounded series of information. The journalist's relationship with users, etc. It's backwards. Sorry. Follow along in your own book if you want it to be not backwards. Alright. So the chapter starts out talking about just an overall what this chapter is going to explore and the rewritten roles of journalism and, you know, how different newsrooms are going to reorganize the way they work online to redefine this relationship between audience members and journalists. Traditionally, there's three categories of journalism, three tasks that we're supposed to do. First, it is the task of journalism to observe and inform. Obviously. Second, journalism participates as an actor in public life when media practitioners comment on the news or advocate particular positions. Good. And third, journalism has the task of providing a platform for voices from outside the media. Okay, those are the three traditional tasks of journalism. The idea of representative journalism, which is the first, like we observe and inform and you take the information and you hold it inside and you do what you want to do with it, but we gave you the information as a journalist and now you absorb it and make decisions based off that. That idea of representative journalism is still a really prevalent feeling in a lot of newsrooms today. But on the other hand, the task of providing a platform for other voices that aren't in the media is going to require a different kind of audience. It's going to require a more active audience and different platforms for them to be active on, as opposed to just listening to our information and thinking about it. They need a platform to put their thoughts on. So the audience becomes more of users as opposed to just audience members, because they receive information, but they also search out information on their own, provide additional information, and interact with others about the information. Traditional mass media has hindered this more active user audience by limiting access and discouraging participation, such as like radio, TV, and newspaper. Those are very linear, aspects, and they really just relay information and the audience takes it. There's no interaction when you're listening to the radio or watching TV or reading a newspaper. But the internet, yay, internet, videos of cats and dogs and sweaters and, news. The internet is not linear. It is an interactive digital media redefining journalism to audience relationships, where it created this great shift in power where the sender and the former receiver now have to figure out exactly how they're going to interact and how far this interaction is going to go and what exactly the audience's role is now that they can talk back to journalists and create their own idea of journalism. Anybody can make a blog, right? So basically, radio, TV, and newspaper equal linear, journalist to audience. But the internet, yeah, is non-linear. Facebook, Storify, MySpace, videos of cats, yeah. The internet. Readers, listeners, watchers all become users. They choose when, where, and how they're going to consume their journalism. It takes work to search for something that's going on right now and watch a YouTube video about it, or to go to Yahoo and read through all the articles. It takes work, and we choose if we want to watch a video, read an article, or just go to Twitter and get the headlines. We choose. So now we can talk back to journalists. So how and if news corporations are going to go about redefining these roles tends to vary from newsroom to newsroom, says the book. And those opinions and processes is what Chapter 3 is going to explore. So get ready to explore. Yeah! The chapter moves on to describe how journalists see users in this shift. The fact is, journalists cannot be everywhere at once. We don't always know what's going on everywhere. That's impossible. There's not like a million of me. That would be really cool, but there's not. So users are where events are happening, Their contributions are increasingly vital to newsrooms because, you're not always out in the field. And, your neighbor might be out in the field and he probably has a pretty decent camera and he's probably videotaping like the massive earthquake that's happening or something, and you can't. But he's your neighbor. He's gonna give you his video of the earthquake, and you can put it on your newsroom's Twitter, and then you have the video of the earthquake. Give and take. And, and citizens users also serve as idea generators, like we don't always have super interesting things to write about. Sometimes we write about the weather. You can use Twitter as an idea generator as a journalist. If you're following the people who follow you, the people who read your news, they're probably going to have pretty good ideas about what's going on. I mean, even people in small towns, like, stuff goes down in small towns. And just scrolling through your Twitter feed, you can get so many ideas for stories, even, like, small ideas can turn into these, huge things. So, increasingly users are more important to the newsroom as far as creating stories and then getting initial information about stories. And then it's the journalist's job to dig deeper, make it into this huge article, etc. As journalists, we don't have PhDs. Some of us, I won't. We don't know everything about everything. As much as we like to talk like we do and we write like we do, we don't. So we need to cultivate this system of active users, of people who know what they're talking about, and they can add value to our news reporting with their knowledge. On the other hand of that, the book also states that all this user application of information can cause problems. People aren't 100% trustworthy, and no matter how smart somebody sounds, they don't always know exactly what they're talking about, and it's not always good quality information. Maybe it's a bad quality video of something that's happening, things like that. But then it's the journalist's job to back check facts and correct themselves. It's a big deal that it's the user's job to first inform us, and then it's our job to take it to a journalistic level. You know what I mean? All right. So the next topic that the chapter explores is users as kind of a coworker to journalists. More often than not, the news corporations admitted that they see citizen content as like personal experiences and photos, not really what they call true reporting. But users' inputs as guardians of quality is a lot more widely valued by news corporations, such as you can comment on pretty much any article a newsroom puts on the internet nowadays, and a lot of times, there's misspellings and things like that, and users can comment and flag that and or let them know if a different article is published with different information, things like that. So most news organizations appreciate their users for quality control rather than for reporting material. A different role that the chapter explains as users, as coworkers, is as ancillary reporters, which means they provide material for professionals. So, like I said earlier, the users provide the outline, the journalists make it an article. There was a manager at a Belgian newspaper said that user-generated content may not be sufficient information source by itself, but a marriage between material from users and journalists can result in something strong. So I think that's more often than not what ends up happening. A really unanimous attitude among the people they interviewed was that in the near future, the role of the user as a coworker is only going to increase. Users' competency of the internet is increasing. Users understand the logistics of journalism much better in a digital environment than they did before. A lot of newsrooms are keeping eyes on particular blogs that they get a lot of cool information from. An editor in Israel, for example, said journalists sometimes find interesting item on user blogs. The newsroom then asked the author to send the piece to the newspaper's news section. He said most users accept the offer, and the newsroom credits the user and links to his or her blog when it publishes the post. So the next subject that the book explores is the users as community members. Audience members are seen as a revenue source to a newspaper, and their loyalty ensures the success of the media enterprise. So newspapers understand that they need an audience. I mean, how else are they going to make money, right? And they see their audience as almost a community of people, and within that community, they need to talk to each other, right? They need to talk to each other, and they need to talk to the newspaper. So user participation is crucial to engaging the audience with online newspapers. It said in the book that they see that a lot of audiences are lacking a sense of belonging with the newspaper today, because we all mostly get our news online, and it's not like back when you got your local newspaper on your driveway and that's how you read it, and you felt that connection to your local newspaper. But now people don't really feel that sense of belonging anymore, and we all just kind of scan all different news sources. So in order to create that sense of belonging, you need interaction between users and, vertically between the journalists and the users and horizontally between all the users. It's not in the interest or the capacity for news media to become sort of a social networking site. That's not what they're there for. They still want to be seen as a news corporation, not a new sort of Facebook. The way journalists view themselves in this ever-changing role, and just to kind of sum up how they feel about the new type of audience that they have. User participation might be really popular right now, but you can't replace professional journalists. That's how, a lot of news organizations feel, that no matter how exciting or popular it is to have user participation, nothing is better than a professional journalist doing their job. They found that a lot of times professional pride was really common. As a journalist, we want to take pride in our ability to do our job without help from people who don't have our degree or our skill level. That is how we feel. Related to these thoughts and feelings is the wish to maintain the reputation of the news media. A lot of organizations don't want people to think that, they're not as professional because they're using user content. Things like journalists who articulated this certain view of their role emphasize that although readers are allowed to participate and collaborate, it must be made clear that in the end, there is only professional work behind journalism. It was really important to some organizations. On the other hand, there was a lot of people they interviewed that described a need to open up journalism to direction from users as more of a dialogical role in newsmaking. The book says that at least some journalists are admitting those practices can be mastered by people who are not media professionals. So a lot of organizations are admitting, journalism is a professional industry, but there are people out there that can master these roles as contributors who might not have a professional degree or training. But then the book goes on to say that they actually found that most often journalists expressed ideas from both sides. She said that the most common newsroom attitude we discovered might best be labeled as an ambivalent role perception. That, they understand the importance of user contributions, and then they also want to keep journalism a professional world. So it takes a meshing of both of these things to work it out. So it says, in other words, professionals are simultaneously encouraging users to engage in as many ways as possible with their news sites and holding to the hardcore of news production as a sanctuary of professionalism. So there you have it. The world is changing, and we're just living in it, and we're going to see what happens. Hope you enjoyed Chapter 3, and if there's any questions, please raise your hand now. And back to you, Avery. Chapter am I doing? 3. I already don't even know what to say. This is not off to a good start. I swear to God I got this. I think I'm talking about the wrong book. Maybe I should write out a bulleted. Yeah. I should do that. This is hard. This is intimidating. Record this on iMovie because it's backwards. Next stop on our delicious journey of news stuff. Participatory journalism. Okay. Whatever. Is what I'm bending. Why don't I just move my because that makes my head look big. We're gonna go back down. Cut off half my forehead. That's the way I like it. Alright. It was delicious and now I'm full and now I'm sleepy and I want to go to bed.